Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Alejandro Perez, the CGI Nerd, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to make copies of a specific object that you created that is a procedural asset inside of Houdini, but making random variations of it and having like multiple of them in a row. So recently I made this video where I have a rock asset that I can randomly generate low poly rock formations in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And I want to make a whole bunch of copies of these, and I'm going to have them be a whole bunch of different types rather than just having this one type here. So, and you can use this to like scatter rocks on a surface or terrain, things like that. And having that as an idea, I'm going to create a grid. I'm going to alt-click on the grid, or is it control-click? Control-click, there we go. That gives me a grid, and I'm going to say this is ground. And then let's go inside. Actually, let's do this slightly different. I could create it here, so it could be a different geometry, but I'm going to create it directly in my rock asset. So I'm going to create a grid here. Okay, so that gives me a whole bunch of points that I can use. And then let's take this and do a poly extrude. Actually, before we do poly extrude, let's do a mountain. There we go. And then that gives us kind of a little bit of a surface like that. And then let's go into the grid. Let's increase the number of divisions here. Okay, so then we get a surface like this, and then let's make the surface larger, just so that we have a bit of an area where we can place rocks. Then I'm going to do a poly extrude, just so that I have a volume. Let's go to distance here, and I'm going to output the back, so that will give us a full piece of geometry there. Okay, so that gives us our geometry. Let's create a null node so that we can keep track of this, and this is going to be out ground geo. So that's our ground geometry there. And then let's create a ISO offset, and that will create a fog based off of that geometry. Oopsies, there we go. And then let's scatter some points there. And I'm going to bring the points down, let's say 50. And this is much larger than I was hoping for. So let's look at this. Let's increase the division samples, so that will make it a little bit more form-fitting to the geometry. Then we have those 50 points there. So we have some points that basically we're going to copy the geometry to. Let me move this up a little bit higher here. There you go. So I'm going to do a copy stamp. So that's what we're going to use to copy the geometry. We have 2 inputs, and over here, if we hover over one of them, you can read down in this section that says primitives to copy, and then the other side it says template to copy. So the template is the points, and then the geometry is this rock. So let's visualize this, so we can see that it is all exactly the same rock, which is not what we want. We need to figure out a way to be able to make variations of these based off of our asset that we have. So what we have as an option is the stamp portion of the stamp copy. I'm going to click stamp inputs here, and then we have an area for variables. Let's create a merge also, so that way we could see the ground and we can see the rocks there. Okay, so here I'm going to create a variable, let's say rock type, and then let's make it a this is the equation basically that we want to randomize it with. So I'm going to say rand, and then we get the expression for the rand. We need a floating point, so I'm going to say $PT, and that's going to give us point numbers. So each one of the points that we have here, so if we look at this, we should see display points. We have the points there. I want to see the point numbers. Each one of them has an individual number here, and that is what is being fed into that expression. So let's go back over here. And the random function itself gives us a range between 0 and 1. So what we can do is fit that, and because over here we have a range from 0 to 100 for the different rock types that we can have. So over here I'm going to do a fit. So we have fit 0, 1. And then we have 3 values that we need to float. So that's going to be our first random value. And then a minimum and a maximum value that we want to fit that in between. So I'm going to do a comma 0, comma, comma 100. Okay. So that by itself doesn't do anything because we haven't connected anything to it yet. This is the copy 1 node name. Let's call it copy rocks, so that way we can find it easy. Then over here, what I'm going to do is say add a expression, which is going to be stamp, and then we have string, a string, and a float value. So the first string is the name of the node, the second string is the name of the variable, the third string is a default value in case this doesn't work here. So I'm going to say the first string is open quotes dot dot slash, and then we should have copy rocks somewhere. Copy rocks, there we go. And that is the name of the node. Then in the quotes we have, this is going to error out, that's okay right now. Rock type, so I need to make sure that I have that. Rock type, and then comma, value, and just put it at 0. Okay. So that should work now. It is kind of having a little bit of an issue just because it wants to recalculate everything. So if I kind of visualize it there, we can see we get different values there. We have a whole bunch of different rocks based off of that. If we wanted to maybe add a transform, actually let's put it before the out geometry, just so that way we can make it a little bit lower so we can see more of the rocks without any of them floating. There's a few that are floating. So negative 0.1. That should be close enough. And then we have a whole bunch of different rocks using the copy stamp. And right now each one of them has the same rotation if it has the same number, anything like that. So if we wanted to, we can add a rotate rock, and then kind of copy this expression so we have a starting point. Fit 0, 1, it's going to go from 0 to 360. Okay, so we have rotate rock, and then here in the transform we can add a transform right above the copy stamp, and then here we can say rotate rock. Or sorry, not rotate rock, but stamp, then open up parentheses, dot slash, copy rocks, close parentheses, comma, open quotes, rotate rocks, and then comma 0. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and you can make individual ones for each one of these values, but I'm just going to paste it into all three, so that way we can have a little bit more variety of rocks and the rotation of each rock, so that way they don't look identical. So that is basically how you use the copy stamp tool inside of Houdini, and how you can use it to randomize an object or settings and things like that, to be able to get a variety of different looking results copying to a set of points that you have. I hope we found this useful. We'll see you guys in the next video. If you want this file, make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is displaying now. Thank you. Bye.